Let's get started with this basic server security for your cPanel server. These are things you're going to do on the SSH for your server. First thing, we're going to set up the firewall. A firewall on your operating system is very important. This is probably the most important security thing for you on your cPanel server. So in this case, I'm going to use Nftables, and I'm just going to base my example based off of the Nftables configuration wiki example, which is here. So I've already edited a sample file that you can just copy and use. So I've added all the cPanel ports. You can actually separate things. If you wanted to, you can separate this into its own port, like I've done there. So if there is any port that you're sure you will usually disable, you can just put it on its own like that instead of putting them together. So for example, if you wanted to maybe make 2087 its own port, we can just copy that, and I will remove all these others. And then of course, remove it from there. So you can do the same for any ports that you're sure you will be disabling them at some point, and for you to get back into your server, you have to come to SSH and enable them. You can put them on their own, and if you need to enable and if you need to disable the port, you'll just comment out that line. You'll just comment out the port that you want to disable momentarily. That's a quick tip for you there. If you need to disable any port, if you want to disable all the cPanel ports, that is for accessing WHM and cPanel, you can comment that out as well. And when you need to come back to the server, you can uncomment it, save and restart Nftables. And we're going to see how to do that in a moment. Depending on the distro you're using, you will be able to follow along with me. In this case, I'm using Alma Linux. So since I'm using Alma Linux, then if you're on CentOS, you're on Rocky Linux, you're on Cloud Linux, you'll be able to follow along because you can use DNF. So the only part we'll be using DNF, I believe, is there, and there if you need to install Nftables. Probably it is already installed. First thing, when you want to use Nftables and you only want to use Nftables, then just disable all these other firewalls. For example, firewall D, I will disable it, and then IP tables as well, and then remove IP tables. If you are following along on Ubuntu, you can do apt purge -y, and I hope the package names are the same, but you can Google that. So let me first of all do this. Copy. Okay, I'm not logged into the server. Let me first log in. Copy, Control-Shift-V, or rather Control-A, SSH into this user. So right now we're logging in with the password, but we're going to disable password authentication at some point. Control-Shift-V, Control-L. So let's see. So I logged into this server probably 10 minutes ago, and you can already see that I have 18 failed login attempts. So you can see why it's important to do this basic cPanel server security on your SSH. And once I do all this, you'll see that every time you log in, the number will probably be 0 or maybe just 1 from a failed login from you. But this is important. So let's continue. The first step is to disable all these firewalls and uninstall them. So I've already done this. I've already removed all these firewalls, but let me just run it here. Control-L, Control-Shift-V. All right, so you can see all of these are no match. That means they don't exist. I've removed all of them. There's nothing to do. But in your case, you probably have them. And if you're on Ubuntu as well, remember to remove UFW. So I didn't add UFW there, but also UFW, you need to add it. So just copy the same thing and add UFW, and here as well add UFW and remove it, because we only want to use Nftables. Then let's install Nftables. If you're on Ubuntu, you can do apt install. Here, let me just do this I'm on Alma Linux 9. So Control Shift V, DNF install. So it's already installed. We don't need to do anything. I'm just going to copy this, enable and restart. Control Shift V. All right, so this means it's already enabled and restarted on my Alma Linux server. So the next thing is to add the configuration files. All right, the next thing is to add this configuration file, and this is going to allow the specific ports that you want to allow. I have the custom SSH port there. You can edit it. I'm just allowing it in advance, and then we're going to add it as our SSH port later on, but it's already there. So once we allow it in SSH and restart SSH, it will already be allowed in your firewall. And then it allows all these other ports. If there's any port you want to add, you can always come in there, comma, and then add whichever port you want to add, right? So I'm just going to delete that. And I've also shown you if you want to separate any port to its own line so that you can enable it and disable it at your own will, then you can do so by just putting it in its own line, like I did for 2087. So let's come back here, and we've enabled Nftables. Here in enabling Nftables, you might probably experience an error, and this is something I've experienced in other servers. And the error will probably be that Xtables is not supported or something like that. And that is usually because you don't have a configuration file for Nftables. So let's come here and let's see how to figure out if you're going to add your Nftables here. So you can add your Nftables to this, but it's always a good idea to use the default configuration file that is loaded by CMD. And in most distros, almost every distro I've come across, usually they load the default in this file, etc nftables.conf. And if this is a case for you, you can simply open that file and then paste all of this in there. But how do you figure out which is the default file that is being loaded on your Linux distro? You can do so by coming to, before I do that, I want to show you, I have added some aliases here that will save me time. So instead of typing sudo systemctl disable enable systemctl status, I'm just going to type sys, and that's going to save me time. With that in mind, systemctl status nftables will usually tell you which is the default configuration file for Nftables. So if you go here, and in my case, you can see by default, this is what is being loaded. Okay, the service file is that. So how can we use this service file to figure out which is the default configuration file where we can add our rules? Just copy that, and I can do cut. I want to read the content of that loaded CMD file. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to paste, to copy and paste. And then we can come down here, and you can see here under exec start, right? NFT is going to start a specific file here. So the file that NFT is starting is this. By all standards, this is a default configuration file, but what I need to do is to go into this file and confirm if that is the case. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to cut that file. I want to see the content. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter. So it starts here. So what you can see here is that this is a file that is commented out. Like literally, it has nothing inside of it. If you read the contents of the file, it's going to tell you uncomment the include statement here to load the default config sample. All right. So the default config sample you can see is that default config sample is this file. So this means that I will edit this file and then uncomment this, and I will add my rules there. Or you can even come in and paste all your rules in this file. But probably you don't want to do that, and you should just do it the way that I'm doing it. On Alma Linux, you uncomment this, and then you add your configuration files in that file. All right. So if you're on a different distro, if if you come here under exec start, you're probably going to see etc nftables conf. This one here. In other distros, this is a file that will be loaded on the systemd file, service file. So if this is a file that has been loaded here and here as well, then just do vi etc config and then paste your content, and then paste all these configuration files inside of that file, right? But in this case, this is not the situation. What I can do is edit this. So I'll do Control L to clear the screen, Control A to go to the beginning of the line, and then I will do vi. I'm using Vim to edit, and uncomment this line. I'll just delete the pound sign at the beginning to uncomment it, and then I will go into this file and add these configuration files. So let's do escape and then shift ZZ to save that file. And we need to go to that file. I will just do vi. I want to edit that file. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to edit that main NFT file. So you can see here, this is the default file that you can enable, and it has some things that are allowed here, but we don't care for all this. So what we're going to do is, in fact, even before editing it, at least let me save it. Control Shift ZQ, Shift ZQ to get out of that, and I want to back it up. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to paste dot back, Control A to go to the beginning of the line, and I'm just going to CP to copy it. So at least I have a backup of it in case of any reason why I would need the default. I can go back to the default file. So for now, I'm just going to edit that, and I can type 1000 dd to delete everything in that line. That's like delete the next 1000 lines, just so it can delete everything in that file. So I'm going to copy all of that, the sample NFT, and Control Shift V. I will paste all of it here. If you need to edit anything, you can always come in here and edit, and this is just based on the sample which is here on the Nftables wiki. So we've allowed all the ports for WHM and CPANEL. So here I don't see UDP. Let me see. UDP. Okay, this one. This should be UDP. I press I to go into edit mode. UDP. That is for DNS. If you're using your server for DNS, you need to allow UDP. So I've rebooted the server. So after rebooting the server, you can just log back in. All right. Now that I can log in, it means that I didn't get locked out by my firewall. NFT list rule set. There you go. Your firewall is working, and now you can continue to do other things.